Hello again. In this episode we complete the Mamlorn Munros by climbing Meall Ghaordaidh, time travel back to the 1800s at Moirlanich Longhouse, and take a crash course in Gaelic pronunciation to attempt to understand how to say names like this without accidentally summoning a demon of the ancient world. Meall Ghaordaidh is a 1039 metre Munro at the mouth of Glen Lochy, between the Mamlorns and the mighty Lawyers Range to the east. A pleasant 5-mile walk up the glen from Killin and its famous Falls of Dochart. The view of the hill from the approach may be grassy and indistinct, but as we know from Craigmore, it's a graceful cone from the west, and its rocky final section, with excellent views in all directions, makes for a fine finale to the Mamlorn group. The area around Killin and Loch Tay is rich in history. Following the south of two roads into Glen Lochy that join further in, we come to the historic Moirlanich Longhouse, a perfectly preserved 200-year-old byre dwelling. Continuing into Glen Lochy, after a few miles we come to Duncroisk Farm, where we leave the road for a track beside the Alt Duncroisk. Briefly following this northward, after about a mile we break off northwest up the broad southeastern ridge of Meall Ghaordaidh, which is essentially a straight line all the way to its rocky final fifth and the summit. Indeed, the mountain is not unlike Schiehallion in its evenly spaced contours on the early stages, and as we'll see in this episode, this can tend to be more of a hindrance than a help in the winter time. Northward to Glen Lyon, the mountain bears two rocky buttresses, and while the hill can be ascended from this direction, it is difficult and less direct. Well, good morning from Bridge of Lochy. As you can see, it's decent weather it looks like, and just heading down here to this turn off to go along to Moirlanich Longhouse. So the name of the game, basically following this road for about 4.5 miles. Well, here we are at the historic Moirlanich Longhouse. Now it's long because at this end animals lived and at this end humans lived. So it's a very kind of self-contained ecosystem. What it would have smelt like is another matter. Now obviously it would have originally had thatched roof, corrugated tin, not terribly attractive, but a great deal more practical and less smelly, I would imagine. Open to visitors during the summer months, not just now unfortunately, but through the magic of the internet we can take a look inside. In traditional Scottish longhouses, the family and their livestock lived under one roof, separated by a wooden partition. One end of the longhouse was reserved for the livestock and the other end for the humans, with each chamber leading into the next. The cottage offers a tantalising glimpse into late 19th century life in rural Scotland. The Robertson family lived here at Moirlanich from 1809 or earlier, and the longhouse remains almost completely unaltered since the last member of the family died in 1968. This is the entrance to the byre part. So you'd have your horse, cow, bull maybe going in there. And that's the reception for summertime. And it will be manned. And this, as you can probably tell from the net curtains, is the human end of the dwelling. Beautiful view, as you can see down there towards Killin and Loch Tay. And not a bad view up there into Glen Lochy either, as you'll agree. The beauty of the longhouse is in its crock construction, unusual in the Scottish Highlands, made by bending pairs of green timbers to a point, linked by a crossbeam to form an A shape. This type of construction was common in England, especially during the Middle Ages, but for some reason is rare in Scotland. The crock timbers have been left exposed at the byre end of the cottage, so visitors can see this traditional form of construction. The longhouse is divided by pairs of crock timbers into 5 bays. The dairy, kitchen and best room have now been restored to how they would have looked in the early 20th century. Joined to the dairy is the byre where the animals were kept. In the kitchen is a hanging lum, or hanging chimney, made of paper mache built onto a frame of wooden lats and lined with paper. The lum helped guide smoke from an open hearth out through a flue and through the roof. Many of the house contents are original to the house, while others have been brought in from elsewhere to match the time period and the anecdotal evidence from people who knew the Robertson family. The Longhouse was purchased by the National Trust for Scotland in 1968, and NTS staff are on hand to explain about the house, its residents and how they lived. The Longhouse is open seasonally with limited hours, i.e. spring and summer, so it's always a good idea to check out the official opening hours on the National Trust for Scotland website.
Well, there it is. Just appeared around the limb of the hill there. Not exactly the most fearsome mountain we've ever seen, but I'm sure it'll have its challenges. Now, it's fairly chilly, about -5 down here, and the wind chill on the top's probably going to be dropping to about -15 when we're on the top, so I have quite a few layers with me today, and obviously crampons, because it's quite clear that there's a fair bit of snow up on the top. Come to Glenlockie power station here, and there's basically a big pipe up on the hillside that's drawing water from the higher slopes. Obviously pushes it down here through the turbines in the power station, and then out there just at the bottom where you can see the froth is coming out from the outlet there. Clean as a whistle, the best kind of electricity. Okay, so about half a mile past the power station now, we've come to a junction here. This is basically a lesser track that goes up the hill. You can reach Meall Ghaordaidh from there, but this is far more direct, straight to Drumcroisk. As you can see there, the path is fairly obvious. You can see there just on the brow of the flatter hill in the foreground. This end of Glenlockie is absolutely gorgeous. Not quite as wild, obviously, as the western end with Craigmore, but very picturesque. Absolutely idyllic walking. This has been really beautiful. The Trossachs is kind of just spilling over here. Well, here we are now approaching Drumcroisk. Basically followed a small track up here, these foothills, and there's an ancient village up here, Tyree. Now this area is absolutely full of history. There's various carved, marked stones around here that go back 3,000 years. Wow, look at that. Absolutely beautiful, the back end of the Tarmachan ridge there.
Unfortunately, the terrain beyond the brow of the ridge proved far tougher than expected, and progress was agonisingly slow, to the point where around just 100 metres from the summit, I had to turn around in order to be back in time to get home.
Okay, looks like there's even more snow on it this time. Now, don't be fooled by the apparently easy looking nature of the mountain. It takes longer than you would expect to get up to the rocky, steeper part there that you can see, especially in the winter time. Now, it's going to take at least 3 hours from Dunkroisk up to the top. I would say at least 3 hours. Now, for safety, I'm leaving 4, so yeah, we'll see how we get on today. Gonna wear crampons from the start, try and speed it up a little bit more on the ascent of that broad hill, just to get up onto the ridge. So hopefully it'll be a little bit faster today. Well, just in case you didn't believe me how cold it is, there's this frozen river down here. It's about -3, -5 here down in the glens. Again, up about 900 metres. Going to be looking at least -15 to, unfortunately, -17 today. Basically, that's the deal in the winter time when you get these beautiful crisp days with excellent visibility and really high pressure. You're watching the thermometer drop into the red big time. Generally, it's the high pressure that allows the cold air in, and we are obviously getting some cold air at the moment down from the Arctic. They're nowhere near as bad as in Chicago and obviously the Midwest of America at the moment, but still it will be noticeably cold at the top. So you can see some tasty icicles here. So we taste of what we've got in store for us further up in the montane. Cross here, and if you continue going past it over a little bridge, you'll soon see a very prominent sign, as we will see, for Meall Ghaordaidh. That'll take us kind of up to about the skyline there, where we break off and head up this rather interminably long rise up onto the ridge there. Looking back down beautiful Glen Lochy now, and it's very peaceful and still here. There's not actually any wind down in this sheltered little corner of the glen. I'm just going to take a moment here to show you a bit more of a profile shot. As you can see, the very long and some might say tedious initial ascent up onto the ridge there, and as you can see, there's still quite a way to go once you are upon the brow of the ridge. So bear all of this in mind, especially if you're doing this in the winter time. It is not as easy as it looks. I was caught out last time. I made it kind of on the upper third of the steep upper third, and yeah, it was so frustrating because it was literally 15 minutes away from the summit, and I had to turn back round purely because of time constraints, and it did not feel like a recreational exercise and more like an army training mission. So today it's a little more relaxed. I'm taking the pace a little bit slower. Slow and steady wins the race on the Munros. Well, here we are at the turnoff, just having come over the bridge. Just to point out, there is a kind of very limited parking area along here, maybe space for about 5 cars. There's about 4 in there just now. As I say, there's maybe space for 1 or 2 more at the most. So if you are coming on a busy day or in the summertime, I would get here early if you want a parking space, because you are not encouraged to park anywhere else along this road because it is a working route, i.e. there will be large farm vehicles using it regularly. They were going over this and following this little track along here to that gate and further up. Can't really go wrong. As I say, it's a Land Rover track. Well, there's a sight for sore city eyes. Magnificent western end of Glen Lochy there. Can you tell what the hills are? No? Very well. Hurdy-Ghaordaidh over here. Craigmore, quite prominent one there. And it's fortress-like double spurs, which we know from episode 12. Over there is Meall Ghaordaidh, of course, and that very kind of lumpy bumpy one, which looks like the smallest at the end of this kind of ridge in the foreground here, is Scarehill. Okay, so this is a small cairn that marks the turn-off for Meall Ghaordaidh. Beautiful upper valley here. You can see the quite pronounced kettles and kames there, the glacial deposits left pristine conditions today. It's only going to get more spectacular as we go up, so if you're looking for views, you have come to the right place. Okay, here we are approaching the brow of the ridge. As you can see, there's still a fair bit to go. Incredible vista over there to the Tarmachan ridge. Down there to Mamlorns Longhouse side and Hurdy-Ghaordaidh. Incredible. Pristine snowy glen there. Glorious.
Let's face it, even for those of us born in Scotland, correctly pronouncing the original Gaelic names of the Munros can be the phonetic equivalent of scaling the north face of the Eiger. Even the most experienced of mountaineers will occasionally come across a name on a map and think, how the f do I say that? Gaelic is primarily a spoken language. There are very few examples of original, i.e. non-translated Gaelic literature from the days when it was the primary dialect in the Highlands. Like Welsh, it's derived from Irish Gaelic, and again like Welsh, basically unintelligible to anyone not from the UK. So alien is it to even our English-speaking sensibilities that many an ignorant Sassenach noble simply didn't bother trying, dismissing it as a primitive language used by savages. Nothing could be further from the truth. Gaelic is a rich, beautiful and evocative language, and in the next episodes we'll cover its history and vocabulary. But the most important start for the walker is how to pronounce it, and while this is a learning process for me too, I can at least pass on a few of the things that I've learned over the years about how to do it justice. So far in the series, I've tried to present the original spellings and pronunciations of land features as much as possible. But, as speakers will no doubt be aware, I don't always get it right, tending to slip into default English phonetics, as 99.9% of visitors to the Scottish Highlands do. So if a pit of fear opens in your stomach when a peer asks you the name of the mountain that you're planning on climbing, it's probably worth taking the time to learn the basic sounds of the language and the rules of their use. While there are a lot of often obscure rules to remember, they're actually less complex than those of English phonetics. The Gaelic alphabet has only 18 letters, with no J, K, Q, V, W, X, Y or Z. Although the English sounds of these letters are present in Gaelic speech. Wait, I hear you ask, what about the Z in the common Scottish surname Mackenzie? That is a good question, and this was originally a letter V, a sound best described as V, that was by then seldom used outside of the Highland glens. When the printing press came into use in the 18th century, this letter was obviously not included on the typeset, so the visually similar character Z was used in its place on printed documentation, and this substitution became the norm. What's difficult about vowels is that they sound like other English vowels, so it's best to approach them as abstract sounds. A, E, I, O, Ö, U. The grave accent is the small mark above vowels that gives written Gaelic an added look of impenetrability. However, you'll be glad to know that all it does is elongate the vowel on which it appears, so the sounds that we just learned become longer and more exaggerated. A, E, E. See what I mean about the sounds? O, U. But don't think you're getting away that easily. Not all vowels are created equal. A, O and U are known as broad vowels, while E and I are slender vowels. What the heck does that mean? Slender and broad vowels change the sounds of the consonants that they surround, i.e. when they appear on either side of one. A consonant can only be surrounded by vowels of the same type, either broad or slender. So unich, but not unich. Don't worry, we'll return to this later. Okay, send in the consonants. If a consonant is surrounded by slender vowels, it is usually followed by a Y sound. If the consonant is surrounded by broad vowels, it is either changed or silent. Clear as mud, right? Arguably, the hardest part of getting to grips with Gaelic is working out which consonants are silenced and which are voiced. And as this is a show about the Munros and not a linguistics lecture, we can only cover the very basics here. BH and MH are pronounced V, e.g. Benvui. GH and DH are a guttural H, e.g. Meall Ghaordaidh. R is never silent and always rolled. For some reason, RD and RT insert a sh sound. So for example, arscht. CH as in German Bach. For example, loch. FH is silent. For example, uren. SH and TH are as English H. For example, hulm. Now on to the slightly more tricky ones. B, D and G are sounded as English only at the beginning of words. Otherwise, they sound like the English P, T and C respectively. So ban, but fa-ta or bitian. P, T and C meanwhile are voiced as English, except when they are in the middle or at the end of a word, in which case there's a slight KH sound before them. Again, guttural as in Bach. F, L, M, N, PH and S are as English, and H is in English when in isolation, which is very rare. For example, sgurna-hule. As mentioned, these are consonants between I or E, and generally have a Y sound inserted at the end. But of course there are exceptions, and these are but a selection. Slender S is sh. So for example, clash. Slender CH is a hard k sound, like the German ich. So for example, Hurdy-Ghaordaidh. Slender GH and DH are like an overdone Y. So for example, Yerak. These four consonant pairs are perhaps the most challenging part of Gaelic phonetics, as they have a tendency to disappear, seemingly arbitrarily following a vowel. If you see them in this situation, it's safer to assume that they are silent rather than voiced. As another general rule of thumb, DH is usually silent and MH is usually voiced. When the consonant disappears like this, it lengthens the preceding vowel, and this is why the common ending aid is pronounced E, as in Benandoi. Finally, Gaelic doesn't seem to like having too many consonants of a certain kind together, so it often simply inserts them where on paper they don't exist, e.g. Gorum, Garav, Valakan. Learning how to say the names that you see on the map takes practice and patience, but these pointers should steer you in the right direction. And of course, there are online resources for those who want to dive deeper into the phonetics of the language. Next month, we'll look at Gaelic vocabulary to learn what those crazy looking words actually mean.
Okay, here we are on the summit slopes, about 100 metres to go now. And as you can see, ice baby. Now, obviously I'm fully kitted out here. I've got my crampons, obviously winter boots, winter gaiters, salopettes or ski trousers, and obviously a ski jacket, and I've got another puffer jacket underneath this because on the top it is beautifully still on this side in the shelter, but I think once we're over this brow we're going to get a bit of wind chill. It's going to give you the panorama from here because it is absolutely incredible today. Well, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to say that it's the top of Meall Ghaordaidh, and the panorama is absolutely sublime. Looking south there, the sun catching the mountains, most beautiful angles there, and looking up there to our future adventures in Glen Lyon. And of course, the majestic Lors range there as well. There's been more ice fields up here, and the snow has been pretty deep. As you can see, it's been fairly blasted, but there's no wind up here, which, you know, this only happens 1 in 100 times you'll get this. So we are very blessed. 2019 has been good to us so far. Hey. Number 38 in the bag. Wow.
Next month we head northeast to the mighty Lors range to take on Meall Ghaordaidh and Meall Ghaordaidh.